Okay, so thanks for coming. First of all, so a little bit of a background on us. So Eric and I are the co-founders of Pivot, and we're also the co-founders of Hitplay. So Hitplay is a systems integrator based in Toronto, Canada, and we built Pivot to solve the problems or challenges we faced as a systems integrator, supporting our clients globally. So when we looked around the market, we see that there's products like Symphony that were kind of exclusive to AVI SPL at the time. Excite is more manufacturer focused, and Utelogy was more on the end customer kind of focused. And as an integrator, we deal with many customers, many integrated systems, and we needed one platform that kind of brought it all together to us. And so it all starts for Pivot with data. All of the device, system, location, customer data is all in one place. And from there, once we have all of that information organized, we can start to create workflows that help with deployment and help to ultimately optimize support. So when an issue happens, how do we get the right people, the right information at the right time to solve the problem as quickly as possible? And so today, what we'd like to do is just walk you through how the actual platform is architected. I know that we have the team at NTNU. We have, you're a consultant as well, right? So I'll do my best to try to bring the features that matter to a consultant, but and then we also have the integrator here as well that supports you. Do we? Or
I don't think they're coming yet.
they're not coming? Okay. Okay.
Jump in.
Anyway, so I'll walk you through kind of what it means to everyone, and ultimately what I'd ask is just ask questions. Don't hesitate to don't. It's better if we're talking less, and you guys are getting the information that you need in order to understand how Pivot works and how it can work for you. So come on over here. And so, as I mentioned, Pivot is organized for basically to provide all of the asset data, system data, and device data all in one place, and then be able to give the right people access to that information. So whether it's the consultant wants to know how a project is going or been deployed, the actual end customer who's supporting those systems, or their integration partner, and even subcontractors that are helping to get jobs done on a global scale. And so we have, maybe Eric, you can kind of talk through the permissioning that goes with it.
Okay, so Pivot's architected from the service provider framework. So you have a primary filter up at the top here that allows you to drill down to a client and then a location. But you, as a service provider, you could look at data across clients. So you manage your clients, and when you do that, for instance, in this case, Tia's the service provider, they create the account for NTNU, they would set up the client, and then the client can make teams. So not all data is relevant to all people. You have subject matter experts, and so Pivot understands that through the creation of teams. And so you can segment your teams as by geography, by technology set, by service level in terms of these are my emergency response people versus my service desk team. All of that can be managed through the creation of teams and then the assignment of rooms and priority levels. And the same logic applies to the actual service provider themselves. So under my profile, you basically have the ability, if you scroll down, to create service provider teams. And so this could be customer specific teams, this could be your service desk as a whole, or location-based teams. So that concept exists at the service provider level and the client level. The additional level of user inside of Pivot is subcontractors. So in the AV integration, you have your integrators, they have partners that they can engage for different tasks. And so you can create your subcontractors. And so you would, as an integrator, you would build your subcontractor list, and then you would create assignments. So for instance, if you're deploying a project, you need a couple extra hands, you can add that organization and then give them access to Pivot. We'll show you how that plays out inside of the the data set. So we'll drill now in. Pivot's architected logically. You have clients, clients have locations, locations have floors and rooms. When you get into a room, you have all your asset data organized by the logical format: input, distribution, and output. Each device has a combination of static or asset data and monitoring data. So if you just click into the processor as an example, you have your basic device information. In this case, an alert has been triggered on it, so you get the alert that's been driven. And if you scroll down the card, we're pulling a bunch of live data here coming from the monitoring module, so we can see CPU load, CPU memory, and if we scroll down, we're going to see that in this case, a program state has stopped. So we understand exactly what the root cause of that problem is, and if we want to, we have the ability to trigger a reboot. So we click that button, we can click confirm. What happens is, it's now pending approval. So remote commands are two-factor authentication. So basically what ends up happening is, in the commands line here, a note goes to the admins on the client side, and they can now approve the pending reboot. Prevents any unexpected actions being taken without approval from the client.
Is this functions you can activate or deactivate, or are they always default on?
So it's always default on.
So really what we want to do is, in the instance here, we've got an alert, we know where to look, and what Pivot's organized to do is provide the right information to the right people at the right time. So in order to do that, you need to have all of your information centrally stored and accessible to everyone that needs to use it. So we're working off of ISE internet here, so it's not the load time, I can assure you, but you have pictures of the room. You can even store in a link to Matterport as an example. So when you think about what you require out of maybe the integrator when you're designing systems and they're building them, you can have all of your as-built drawings stored here. You can have pictures of the room, and you can have 360 views. That matters for the team at NTNU for quick access when they're trying to help somebody remotely and you want to get a view into that room. Line drawings, available with a click, right? And so again, you're trying to build your action plan to restore uptime, everything accessible in seconds. User guides, and then even the latest code, because sometimes you determine what the action plan is, you want to make sure that you update the program in order to resolve the issue quickly, and then store the latest code.
So just a note, so pictures are upload. However, line drawings, user guides, and program files, depending on how you store information, you may want to keep it in SharePoint, but you still want it accessible in this format. So you have the choice of uploading files or adding links. And so, especially code files with version control, you probably want to link to a repo where that's stored versus uploading directly here, but the option to upload here, especially if there's a service call taking place and you're subcontracting, you might want to do that.
So, it's great to understand that the device is online or offline, but ultimately it's about the user experience. So is the system functioning the way we expected it to? And so Pivot has defined rules, which are basically monitoring predefined alerts. So how is the system working, and then triggering alerts based on that. And so there are about 200 alerts that are available to a user or to an integrator that will start to monitor the system the way we design, and then you have the ability to add custom rules as well. So maybe you are designing a new system and you know that this is the function that you want to make sure is implemented, you can create those custom rules as well. Same on the NTNU side, you're trying a new program code and you want to make sure that you can monitor that. You also have the ability to track progress, right? So any changes to the system are automatically logged. So if we took that example of the reboot, if that was actually triggered and approved, you would see that show up here. If you replace the part, you would see that show up here. So you're always having this like one single source to view the history of the system. You have the ability to assign people or subcontractors to the work, so they will get access to the same data set in order to do the job, however you determine how long to do it.
This is really nice for example, for hospitals. We're working now with the IT department at one of the largest hospitals in Oslo. I think they're building a new hospital, which is 379,000 square meters.
Wow.
And they would have great use for this kind of system because every 4 years they need to
refresh the gear.
refresh everything, and also they will have in new suppliers.
That's it. A lot of handoffs in AV in order to get the job done. And this is probably the feature that would matter to your team.
Yeah.
So, commissioning and documentation is pretty important. You want to know that when the team at ETA came in to do scheduled maintenance, how did that exercise go, or how did a service call go, or how did commissioning go? And so you can actually have their best practice templates. We use Avixa standards, and then you can customize this as well to add in what you want to check. But essentially you can have a checklist that takes you from installation through to device tables to configuration.
So before you click,
Yep.
just a couple of things on this. So this status doesn't get updated until you manually change it. So what this allows is, let's say you've got your techs going in, you could actually create the checklist at the beginning, they can complete the install piece. You have your field engineering team that comes in, does your configuration, so they're doing your device table, your monitor, your network, and then you got your programmers at the end, they come and complete this. You can see the progress of this from the previous view. And then the other thing is that if you're deploying monitoring, I'll explain the architecture in a second, but what we have now is automatic checks built into this. So for instance, right in your commissioning, you're getting live data that's helping you speed the commissioning process. So we'll show you a couple of the features on the asset table, but you can, in the asset table, define, for instance, what port from your drawings devices are plugged into. If you define that and you're monitoring your switch, then it will automatically tell you that it's plugged into the right port. So we can help speed that commissioning process, and making it more accurate and quicker.
The program is the whole software you provide. It's stored in a cloud service.
Correct. So this
is it possible to do it on-prem?
So unfortunately, no. So this is hosted in AWS. So what we can do is regional hosting, but we can't right now. We can't package this as an on-prem solution.
So we'll have another client where this could be interesting, but they are not allowed to store anything in the cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our original vision is the lighter the better in terms of implementation.
Yeah.
But it's something we hear periodically as well. But I mean, what's important here is, again, when you think about the collaboration between a consultant, a customer, and the integrator, you're all looking at the same data. You're also understanding the progress of the actual integration, and the same goes for support. A service call is no different than a commissioning checklist. There are a series of actions that have to be taken, and you need to know what's been completed, what isn't, right? And so you can save notes as well, right? And the next person that opens up will see those notes. So it's built to make the handoffs more seamless. And so all of those reports are available in template form, but also customizable.
So if you click on remote access, just one detail, and then I know Magnus wanted me to talk a little bit about the way the monitoring works. So, oftentimes you need integrators will deploy remote access into a site, and so you just sometimes lose track of how to get that. So you're allowed to save your different methods of remote access into a location. So this is really just, again, making sure that all the information related to support is available in seconds to whoever has to take action when the time calls.
So is there anything you want to
So
talk
if
about?
you jump to integrations, I'll just talk about the architecture of Pivot. So Pivot supports cloud-to-cloud data acquisition and on-prem from devices. So the cloud-to-cloud, we have Teams, WebEx, and Zoom integrations for the UC data. We can also overlay manufacturer-specific tools. And so the way that works is, as you saw, there's a device card. We actually specify the sources of the information, and in a future release, what we're going to do is allow you to specify the priority. So if a data point is reported from 2 sources, you can pick the priority integration, and that data point will be reported. So we understand that what you want is, the most accurate picture of health. So you want the ability to bring in multiple data sources, because sometimes they give you different feature sets, and you're looking for that richness. And where there's duplication, you can pick the priority. So you have the cloud-to-cloud pieces, and then the way that we do the device data is that if you go back to the room, so yeah, if you have like the Shure, the MXA mics, the touch panel, when you're in the device table mode, I can show that in a minute, but when you're in the device table mode, all you have to do is go and pick the monitored by column. So the monitored by looks for processors. You allocate a device to a processor, and that basically adds it to a configuration file. So this download here basically auto updates as you add devices to the monitored by. You download this file, it contains the device list, and you upload that to a slot on the processor, and it contains the authentication information embedded to begin communication with Pivot. So there's no programming required, there's only a configuration step to define who is monitoring that, or what device, what processor is monitoring what device. All the DLLs are hosted in Pivot and controlled by us. So there's a feature request process if you want extra data to be reported, but out of the box, there's no programming that's required to enable the monitoring that you see.
So we know data is very important to NTNU, and so we believe it is. We believe the heart of the system is really the asset and device and live data that makes up the insights to ultimately do the right things for the system and deliver uptime. So you do have customizable reporting, based on the job role. So you can have a client review dashboard, you can have a service manager dashboard, you can have a lifecycle dashboard, and you can create your own. So what's important to know is key elements about of the system health. And so, is our firmware out of date? Are we approaching the end of the life of devices under warranty, the end of life of those devices? And so you can now plan better in terms of your technology refresh cycle. And so these
also makes it easier to budget.
Exactly. It's we believe in partnerships, right, with customers, and it really is about how do we ensure the reliability of the system long term together, right? And you need the data to do that. And definitely on the integrator side, you want to be able to talk about those things so that the NTNUs of the world can plan accordingly, because that always takes time. And we're looking at also the reliability of the devices in your system as well, right? So how can we give you insights about what's working and what's not in those integrated AV systems that you support every day? And what's great is as we scale out the user base in terms of integrators, we will have more insights on a system that you're building here in Barcelona that's already been built in Oslo, and you can provide that type of design insights to the network.
So just a quick, so some of this, so for instance, like the firmware management, the way we're doing this is we have a data scraping backend, and we're pulling information from the manufacturers. So we're tracking by product in our database, the firmware revisions. And so we are just looking at what's in the asset table here versus what's current in the market. And that's how we can do this automatically. So there's no work that you have to do other than making sure that the data that we need to do this comparison exists. And so, in this case, you got firmware unknown. That's because products are missing current firmware versions inside of the asset table. So some of it does require to have good data hygiene on the input side, but more and more devices are reporting their firmware version through the monitoring tools, so it requires less human data entry. And again, like the EOL would be done the same way, just knowing what devices are being reported as end of life. The way that
Sorry,
should
I go back
that's
there?
okay.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So I just from an overall service perspective, you can customize these dashboards, right? So you can focus on your highest priority. So these are widgets that you can add in, and you can create what's priority for your team depending on the role, and then save that as well. So all you would do is add, drag, and drop, and then it's a save as, and you've created the report for Olvin here, right? So in terms of what matters to you as a customer, it's working with your integrator to make sure that you're delivering uptime that meet the SLAs that you've established in the agreement. And we are tracking MTTR versus your actual alerts, right? So you have that conversation you can have about how well things are going, or what do you actually need to work on in order to do better next month. And so the idea is really just to focus on the system health together and work on what you need to do to ultimately deliver a better experience. Are there any other items, Eric? Or?
So just one thing. So if you go to devices and list, so just two features here. So this data table is real-time editing multi-user. So you think about deployment, you might have 4 techs doing the work. If some of the devices need IPs entered, or they're updating usernames or passwords, they can all work simultaneously inside of the sheet. The sheet view is completely configurable to the task. So if you go to columns, each one of them can configure the view of this sheet to suit their whatever they're doing. So they can, they can pick the room. They can say, I want to see the model, manufacturer, and scroll down. Maybe just for whatever serial number feed, and then you can save it. And this reconfigures to show that view, and that's per user. So it makes it easy to reconfigure this sheet and do your, whatever data entry you need to do for the task. This is also filterable across every tab. So essentially, if you think about you as the client, you would have the data across all your locations. You could segment that by building, by campus, by room, by classroom type. So the flexibility here allows you to look at the data. You could even determine okay, we want to replace all our amplifiers this year. I want to see just my amplifiers across the campus, right? So,
and because you've done it the right way when you brought it online, you know when the warranty's coming up, if anything's under contract, we know the reliability of those amplifiers, because it's all the way down to the device level.
So we give you the dashboarding to kind of get that high level view of where my priority should be, and then the asset table gives you the ultimate flexibility to kind of look at the data and understand how you're going to take action. The other thing about the data table is, I think I counted this more, there's 47 fields that we allow you to capture today. Mid-year, we're going to do a release that's going to add a little extra functionality. Yeah, no problem.
I have another.
Just give me the microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
So what we're going to allow is the ability to add customized columns. So you'll be able to add a new column and change the title of it So what we're getting right now is a lot of requirements, like for instance, we just had to add PO as an example because one of our clients wanted to track by ordering the product. So to help the customers get exactly what they want out of the data side, we're going to release the ability to do that customization. I'm just going to flip sides here. Last thing I'll show you is really a planning function for deployment. So much like the one of the incentives of logging your switch data is that it helps with your coordination. So you can, if you allocate your devices to a switch, just like you would allocate your devices for monitoring to a processor, you can then see the port counts on your different VLANs. And we auto-calculate your PoE budgets as well. So you then have this record of your switch loading. So if you're doing upgrades and you're like, shoot, how many ports do I have left in that room? You can just quickly assess that. And this works for both your service provider LANs and your client LAN. So you can track them by ownership, so that, again, there's this visibility of how the system is set up. So I think I'll stop there and just kind of like leave it open to questions.
Also just a little bit about how this information is harvested. The question in the module that we have installed in Restaurant. So what's the process for starting to harvest this information once we have this cloud up and running?
So what, like, in order for the Crestron processor to send, there's like a little info document about the port, but I think it's just it's like HTTP. It's like it's just
for these guys, so it's just a small Crestron program you install on the processor. And
yeah,
all that stuff.
yeah. And that's what you download from.
So you don't need XCO Cloud, for example?
No. So yeah, so we've pre-built, like there's a monitoring library, and so when you pick the TS770 as a device and say you're monitored by the RMC4, that little download there is actually a CPZ file, and it contains what we call our pivot runner, and it contains any of the devices that you've assigned to it, and authentication credentials. And so then you just have to load that on the processor. You only have to load it once. Any updates you make after this actually auto-update. So the runner itself, once deployed, can auto-update the runner, and it can revise its configuration file, so what devices are assigned to it. So if you were to say, okay, we're ripping out all the touch panels, you delete that touch panel from Pivot. It only updates once a day unless you push it manually. So in the evening, it'll get the new config file and delete that from the monitoring profile.
So you go through the Crestron, onto the Crestron subnet to harvest the information.
Correct.
Which is on the subnet.
That's right.
Yeah. Is it possible to go through? Can you open the web interface on the equipment behind on the subnet
From Pivot? No, not right now. No. So we're yes. So right now we can't do anything like that. So from an info security standpoint, this is probably an important point. So right now it is one-way communication out. So the processor reaches out to Pivot, and even when I showed you that command, the way that works is it's not real time. You basically post that command, it gets dropped in a bucket. When the processor reaches out to say, here's my data because it's every 5 minute, right now we have it at 5 minute intervals, so the Crestron processor collects the data over a 5 minute period and then sends it to Pivot. When it sends it, it also says, is there anything in this bucket here for me to action? Then it pulls down the reboot command and will run that here. But Pivot never sends anything into the environment.
Which is good for security.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've so our we deployed the first version, which you guys saw in the demo. That's with Canadian customers, and in Canada, it's at banks and insurance companies. And so that kind of like heavy focus on security is kind of baked into like what we've done here. We know that potentially there's things we could do eventually, but right now we're going to take it slow and approach it that way.
You're located in Canada?
We're in Canada, yes.
Soon to be Americans?
That's, oh geez, yes. We got a 30-day reprieve. Deal with that in March.
State number 15.
Yeah.
We'll be number 60 probably.
I'll come over. We're going to join forces on the Arctic.